music's so great. It's greater than we can ever be. So how can we be puffed up?
I'm Jolt Bognar, and this is Living the Creative Life. Our guest today is pianist Steven Spooner. Steven, it's a real honor and a pleasure to welcome you here.
The honor's mine.
I can't think of many musical figures who embody more participation than you do. When you were growing up, did you picture that you were going to be recording dozens and dozens of albums, judging competitions, teaching on a conservatory level, performing around the world, and reaching such a wide musical community?
No, I was that kid that every piano teacher hated to see come to their door. I was.
Hmm.
I had no interest in piano, none whatsoever. My parents made me take the instrument, and I told the teacher on more than one occasion that I will be quitting after 1 year. That was the deal my parents made with me. They said, you can take it for 1 year. If you don't like it, then you can quit. And so I was determined to quit. But this teacher, she tried very hard. And she tried every kind of piece. And I hated them all until she got to Chopin.
Hmm.
And it was like a Damascus Road experience. I can't explain it. I think for whatever reason, that's what happened with me. It's the love which came unexpectedly, like a lightning bolt into my life. It was enough to sustain all these years and all these projects and to be and of course, along the way, having people like Richter, who served as almost a beacon and a guide and inspiration in this life, which has maybe sometimes nothing to do with career or PR, but it has to do with a kind of priest-like calling, devotion.
Your online accounts are titled Richter Maniac. And this is a language I speak to because Richter was practically a religion for many, many aspiring performers or not even musicians. Richter can be considered a guiding light. What was it about Richter?
In Richter, I feel purity and a love of music. I don't always like Richter. That's the interesting thing. And I own over 600 recordings of Richter alone. But what's interesting is that Richter is the only pianist that I collect, that I have no idea how a new piece of his might sound. I have no idea if I haven't heard him play this piece, there's no telling what he has come up with because he has a unique ability among many genius abilities. He has the unique ability to take any piece of music and clean it or scrub it from its varnish of interpretational residue somehow. He looks at the piece anew, and then the way he lived his life. He lived his life in the service of music. He lived his life. I love the title to one of the chapters in the book, a Don Juan of music. And he really was. He was so fascinated by music and reading and always learning, always developing. I mean, there's so many things.
You made an album called Dedications in which you paid tribute to Richter, Gilels, help me out with some of the other names. Horowitz.
Cliburn.
What was the idea behind paying tribute to heroes?
These people and their art is very precious to me. I wouldn't be playing the Prokofiev Sixth Sonata if I hadn't heard Richter play it. I wouldn't be playing pieces of Chopin if I hadn't. I mean, I'll show you my iPhone case. I've got Arthur Rubinstein on my iPhone case. These people are so so vital to me because I've spent a lifetime cultivating my love of music through their recordings.
We can be under the influence of a tremendously inspiring performer and what may be their specific interpretation. There can be a risk in emulating, and you have drawn upon a lot of great performers. And I, of course, do know that you have your own voice. Was this something that you were mindful of?
That's such a great question. And first of all, I think even if we do want to copy, because I suspect you would want to copy Richter too.
Tried most of my life.
You know, is that we can't ultimately. I was speaking of Prokofiev's Sixth Sonata. When I learned the piece, I was so crazy about Richter's recording, and even my teacher, as soon as I played the piece for him the first time, he said, "Oh, you love Richter?" And I said, "Yes, yes, I do." And the more I studied the piece, when I went back to the recording, I suddenly didn't like it because I had gone in a different direction. I not like it, but I suddenly saw the piece differently. But the inspirations or their influence on me has been not in aping the way that they play the piano, but taking something from them that I think is essential, like the kind of ring of Gilels playing the piano, the way that that sounds, the thunder that he brings, the energy, the open-heartedness of Cliburn, so overwhelmingly sincere, you know, and then Richter's lifelong sort of service to music. I mean, those are the things that I wanted to inform what I did, not playing like that.
I know that you've also had a lot of several teachers. Among those, who would you say had some of the most influence on you as a person and as a musician?
Well, I hate leaving teachers out.
Right.
But the big bombshell teacher for me was Nodar Gabunia. He was the true master in my life, even though I was lucky to work with several other masters. Later, I think it was my age and the time and the things that he gave me. He was a genius, and the longer I live, I understand how incredible he was.
What did he represent to you? What was your takeaway from what you got from him?
I'm still learning from the things that he said all those years ago. Um, he was intellectually so brilliant. Um, he was artistically so instinctive. I loved how he could listen to a single performance of anyone and put his finger on the strengths and weaknesses of that recording. He was incredibly humble, unbelievably humble. The first time I played Prokofiev 6 for him, and getting back to the story, he said, "Oh, you love Richter?"
Oh, he was the one.
"Yes." And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I don't think this piece goes like that." And he says, "I think of it more as a symphony of bells, and much more resonant, much more pedal." And then he said something that really surprised me. He said, "But I'm ready to guide you down either path." And being young and beholden to Richter, I said, "Well, of course, Richter, And so 3 or 4 weeks went by, and I asked him, "Maestro, where did you hear this? Where did you get this idea of this symphony of bells?" And he casually told me that Prokofiev had told him that. So instead of hitting me over the head with this, he just casually dropped this bomb on me, and his background was, now that I see it, was, he was the student of Goldenweiser in piano, and his weekly composition teacher was Khachaturian. And when he was really ready for something, he would go meet Prokofiev and Shostakovich. And his very best friend, who I just found out, just a few years ago, his very best friend, they were inseparable, was Kapustin. And that they together made the Russian premiere of the Bartok Sonata for two pianos and percussion. It was a kind of richness musically. And I was very, very fortunate to find him.
I know that you've just gone over to Germany to select out an instrument, and in our discussions about instruments, it's clear to me that what you're looking for is extremely specific. So if that's the case, what do you look for?
Well, I look for a great deal of range of sound. As you know, our hero Richter tried pianos. You know the story about him being in Japan and going to each piano to see how softly they played? Because he took it for granted that they could all play loudly. But he said there's no greater effect than playing softly. And he went and found the one which could really go very soft. I want to hear tonal beauty in the instrument. And for me, one thing that I search for on a piano is its ability to play different layers of sound, counterpoint. And so those things.
How would you test that, though? It seems like you'd have to, in order to figure out the full range of an instrument, means testing out your full range as a performer. You only have a few minutes, especially if there's a whole row of instruments, but I know you do this all the time. So what do you do?
So I have actually a particular set of pieces that I play. So I play some of the opening of the Rachmaninoff Second Sonata to test a piano's ability to roar a bit. I play some repeated note passages of some of my own pieces and some in the literature to test the piano's responsiveness. And then I played Debussy to test a piano's ability to play different levels of sound, particularly like something like Sunken Cathedral, which begins with this counterpoint of sound. And then I'll play a lyrical piece, but I have the excerpts sort of worked out, and I try it on every piano, and for me it becomes pretty clear which one. But of course, it's just my hands and my ears, and somebody else might not agree.
What happens with those exacting standards when you find yourself on stage with a subpar instrument? Can you still reach for your own personal highest level and still achieve an outcome that is artistically successful?
Very interesting question, because I also don't believe that it's good to play on a great piano all the time. I think it's a very good exercise to play on a piano that doesn't give you much. But one has to also know what a great piano could give you. So it's a balance. Yes, it's frustrating when we don't play on great pianos, but as Richter said, he took it as a challenge to really throw himself into this subpar piano and to see what he could get out of it. And he was frankly surprised at the results on occasion.
I think he said actually that some of his greatest concerts were on the worst pianos. And I think that's not a coincidence. I think that sometimes, that's that story of him wandering the Yamaha showroom. They asked him, "What do you expect of a piano?" He said, "I expect more of myself." You touched upon the idea of being musically omnivorous and you have a huge repertoire. How can you also ensure, if you can, that you're growing artistically?
I don't know the answer to that question. All I know is that music is so beautiful in that it opens itself to us in ways that we don't expect, and in times that we don't expect. Music, which it's almost like a window that suddenly becomes open, which had been closed on a composer's work, on a certain piece, and one has some moments to go through the window or not. But I'm often wondering about the miracle of it all, that it's constantly developing inside of us. One day I'll wake up and just think, I haven't thought about that piece in a long time. And I'll go pull the book out and start reading it, and I'll decide within a day, I'm going to play this. Wow. I haven't thought about this piece in years. So it's a mystery. I encourage them to cover a lot of repertoire. I encourage them to know that there will be career mishaps, but we don't do this for a career. The career is almost a byproduct of our love of music. We are in search, and I know that sounds altruistic, but I think it's also essential for one's career, that you have to chase down this beauty and this love in order to have a career. And so I encourage them in that way to learn how to cultivate their love for music. Learn how to do that. Certainly, I'm also a very practical person, and I talk to them about the things that they should do or not do in their careers.
Stephen, I'm going to use my opinion as an example so that you don't get to dispute it, but there's a point to this. When I see how you interact with the people around you, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, you emanate waves of compassion and thoughtfulness and caring.
Well, I've lived a charmed life. Um, I had parents who loved me and really good friends. Um, I grew up in a house of faith where being empathetic and understanding to people was something which wasn't just preached, but practiced. But again, I come back to the music because I music's so great. It's greater than we can ever be. So how can we be puffed up?
Now, for any artist, no matter how impressive the bio is, there are going to be a lot of unseen setbacks and disappointments, even if it's just the disappointment of expecting more from ourselves on stage. What has been your relationship to disappointment?
We're very close. um, because I've had a lot of failures, a lot of disappointments. And I think that we learn more from disappointments. It also shows us a bit of our character, our weaknesses. I mean, to be a pianist or a musician of any kind is a high calling. It calls us to be the best version of ourselves every day, to lay aside the mundane things, to strive to work on ourselves every day. This is quite a calling, especially in a world that's giving us an opposite message. Um, and so, of course, there are going to be disappointments, professional disappointments. I've had many. My gosh.
Stephen, if we accept that our lives as musicians are, are not granted enough time, what do you say to the person who feels that they're behind the game and has not yet lived up to their fullest potential?
I love getting this question from young students who feel behind. I can see the passion that they have. And I said, I want to tell you a story about a pianist that I knew. Um, he he never really had formal lessons. He was just a music lover. But he really enjoyed sight reading at the piano, and he was sight reading. He played for the ballet, did some company at the opera, and one day he went to a violin recital and he saw that the accompanist had played a solo. And he had never thought of himself as really being a soloist, but he thought maybe I could also play a solo. And so he rented the hall in his small sort of provincial town and decided to learn a recital of solo pieces. All of his favorite composer, Chopin. And they're like, and I said, his name is Sviatoslav Richter. And feeling behind was the fuel of his entire career. I think he always felt behind. And Gilels was the exact opposite. Rubinstein heard Gilels when he was just a young teen. And he writes in his diary, he said, if this kid ever gets out of Russia, he might be one of the great pianists. I mean, Rubinstein right away, and he was this child prodigy. He never made a bad sound. He never made a bad phrase. He never did anything wrong. I think the two of them, they needed each other somehow. And Richter probably always felt behind. And it fueled his entire career. So being behind, I don't think is always a bad thing.
Stephen, as an extension of this, and your description of music as being your central to your joy and your goals, how would you know when enough is enough?
Only my heart knows that answer, because I'm music continues to speak to me and beckon me to play. I can have almost no sleep, be feeling terrible. And if a student comes in and plays really beautifully, and we're talking about a great piece of work, a great work of art, suddenly both of us are elevated in, in mind and body. It's it's a mystery how so I would say I've noticed that my hands they're not able to do what they once could. Um, Certainly, it's I'll need to follow my good friend Sergei's uh, path. He's such a great example to all of us. Um, but as long as the music is inside me, um, I feel like uh, my life will end and there will be much to accomplish.
Stephen, thank you so much for being here. It has been a pleasure being with you.
Thanks.